Hey there and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video. And today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Ladybug Miraculous, and more specifically, into the various different wielders of the Ladybug Miraculous to try and figure out who's the best, and of course who is the worst, in my opinion at least. Now, as we know, the Ladybug Miraculous is probably the most important Miraculous in the entire show. It's held by the main hero, and it's the Miraculous that's able to reverse the damage inflicted by the villains. The Miraculous that's always there to save the day. From Season 1 to Season 5, this has always been the status quo. The butterfly and the cat are important too, but they're also just the weapons of the villain and the sidekick. The Ladybug, that's the hero weapon. Anyway, it's very clear that Ladybug is the big cheese. But what does the Ladybug Miraculous do? Like all Miraculouses, it gives you a couple of enhanced base attributes, like increased speed, endurance, strength, and a multi-purpose yo-yo, which can be used as a communicator, a weapon, a device to swing around and get places faster, and most importantly, can be used to summon a lucky charm. And this is the true special ability of the Miraculous of Creation. This lucky charm can take the form of anything, really, but it's always something the user needs. They just need to puzzle it out and decide what to do with it. There are also a bunch of other power-ups like making Akuma-proof charms, or flying, or ice skates, or a scuba suit. But the lucky charm, that's the main one. Although, you know the Astro Bug power? Just side note for a minute. Like, does that make her less able to fight? Can she still do her other things? Because if not, why not always use that power up? Because, you know, she can fly. It's much better than swinging around. And she'd be much faster and harder to defeat. Honestly, Marinette, get your head in the game. Come on now. But yes, back on topic. We got to talk about some ladybugs, or rather some ladybug wielders, and so I suppose we'd better get into some rankings, eh? Well, first of all, we better set our parameters up. We're talking the best ladybug, and that encompasses a lot of different things. Strength, skill, intelligence, success, and if applicable, I suppose, their ability to work with their teammates. Those are just some of the categories to rank. Some of the things you got to take into account when deciding who is the best hero. Not the strongest hero, but the best hero. And we'll have to immediately start by disqualifying basically all of the historical Ladybug characters except for like two, Hippolyta and Joan of Arc. And furthermore, you kind of have to break Marinette in half. There's early seasons Ladybug, so seasons 1 to 3, and then there's Guardian Ladybug. You know, from when she's the Guardian and when she starts getting way stronger. Because at times they really do feel like different characters, so I decided to split them up for this listing. Otherwise, the other contenders here are Mr. Bug, Scarabella, Monarbug. Ugh. Why do they have to change the names every time they pick up a new Miraculous? It's cringy. And that one's really horrendous. Monarbug. Really, mate? Jesus Christ. And I think we'll finish off the list with Antibug. And, you know, why not? She's not technically a holder, but she has powers that are pretty much identical, so we'll go with her as well. So I guess there's really nothing else for it but to jump into things and start up the rankings. Okay, so we'll be ranking them from worst to best, and honestly, I think it's clear that you can't go past Antibug as being the worst of the bugs, completely and utterly. Like, of all of them, she's the worst. She has enhanced abilities, she has the yo-yo, she's got all of that. And she's even got a cool reversed costume. I'm down with that. I'm always a fan of the inverted colour schemes, but beyond that, she seems like a massive dud. Like, for one, her power completely depends on somebody else, as Hawkmoth is technically in control of everything, and thus, I'd argue her ability to have any sort of free will is rather limited. On top of that, her lucky charm kinda sucks. Summons a weapon, which in theory sounds good, but the yo-yo's already a pretty great weapon. It's a jack of all trades type thing. You can swing it around, hit people, block things, tie people up, trip them, use it as a slingshot, that sort of stuff. But when she brings out, I don't know, the giant sword, it just feels like it doesn't have the same versatility. It makes her actively weaker than she would have been. I feel like the beauty of the lucky charm is it's so weird and difficult to predict and perfect, and thus it's almost impossible to defend against. Like, just look at some of the shit that Marinette gets her hands on. It's insane, and yet she makes it work. A sword is pretty easy to counter. It's pretty easy to understand how Chloe's going to use it. On top of that, Chloe is not the most tactically minded person at all. And I think of all the Ladybug users we've ever seen in the show, she has to be the dumbest, yeah? The smoothest of brains. Even Joan of Arc, who was described as a fighter, not a thinker, which seems generous from Tiki, probably had a bunch more success than her in that department. I mean, she was briefly a war general, I suppose. And then, on top of that, she failed her mission outright in her sole appearance, so bad luck there. And so, of all our characters, she has to go in the trash can first. Trash tier, bottom rung. Goodbye. Next up, and I feel like this one's probably a bit controversial, it has to be Monarch Bug, whatever he was called, who gives a shit? And let me explain. In theory, the dude has it all. He's got a secret hideout, access to all the Miraculouses, which pretty much lets him have any power that he chooses to have, right? He has the Ladybug, and so now he's pretty much unbeatable. And on top of that, he doesn't even have the stupid time limit like the teenage heroes. He should be unstoppable, and thus he should be on top of the list. Shouldn't he? But why isn't he, you might ask? Well, like I said at the start of the video, it's not ranked with just strength in mind. And even though he is immensely powerful, perhaps the most powerful character we've ever seen at this point, and his plan was well thought out and foolproof, he still lost. And he not just lost, but he lost to people with no powers. Despite having enhanced strength, speed, agility, you name it, he was taken down by a bunch of kids with paintball guns and a depowered Ladybug in a homemade costume. Yeah, somehow they overpowered him, overpowered the dude with super strength, and took back the Ladybug and the cat. And he ends up looking the fool and snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And so that's why, despite objectively being stronger than almost anyone on the list, he just can't make the cut. Because this is the best wielder, not the strongest wielder, and his failure overshadows literally every other aspect of his character. He absolutely should have been able to fend them off. I mean, he has other powers he could have used, but he cracked under the pressure and he took the L. The dude is a smooth brain supreme and he deserves to wallow in the trash tier with Anti-Bug. Next, I think we'll go with Joan of Arc. And you might be thinking, wait, what? Shouldn't Scarlet Fate be higher? How is she so low? After all, she's an adult wielder, and this means she doesn't have to transform back after doing her thing, and on top of that, she was full on fighting a war and kicking ass. But I don't know, a couple of things did rub me the wrong way. So for one, she ends up getting nabbed by the English. This is just historical fact. But how? She has superpowers, remember? Normal Joan of Arc in real history, she didn't. She got captured, she burned at the stake. But in this world, she has superpowers, and these random knights and soldiers, they don't. The only explanation here is that despite her enhanced strength, speed, stamina, and weapon, which, could be a yo-yo, could be anything, who knows, she somehow got overpowered or cornered. So already that's very embarrassing. But then you gotta add in the fact that she abandons her mission outright, which was seemingly to protect France. Also, she could run away with the former cat wielder, who was fighting for the English. Now, the weird optics of the Guardians giving out two Miraculouses to opposing sides in a war aside, in this context, the French were very much the good guys during the 100 Years' War. Their land was full on getting invaded by the English who wanted to conquer it and make it their own. And so, I know that the show frames it like her king straight up betrayed her and was a deranged despot, but let's be fair, the French were getting constantly invaded and smashed during this time. I mean, anybody would be a bit on edge. And so the glorious national hero of France, Saint Joan, it turns out she wasn't much of a hero at all, because she left her kingdom, the peasants, the people, to just keep getting smashed by the English over and over, so she could run off to live with one of the invaders happily ever after. It's not very heroic. And so look at her resume. Incompetent enough to get captured by regular soldiers, abandon her mission. Scarlet Fate, you are borderline disqualified for that alone. And really, it's only borderline that I don't send her to the bottom of the list. But I guess, she was briefly competent while she was active, or at least until she got captured. So I'll keep her here, but she can't go any higher. Next up, we'll go for Hippolyta, because really, we don't know all that much about her. She's a legend, wrapped in myth, wrapped in enigma, all that kind of stuff. But apparently, in this universe, this obviously not real person is real. Okay, so Hippolyta is supposed to be the queen of the Amazons in Greek myth, a nation of powerful warrior women, like, Wonder Woman. So in terms of strength, this woman already has an army of powerful followers, which, it doesn't sound too shabby to me. And then combine that with the fact that she, in turn, will have enhanced attributes, and you're looking even better. After all, the Miraculous does power you up. And even better is the fact that if she is real, this means that she's the daughter of Ares, the god of war. And in popular media, usually being a demigod, a child of a god, comes with a lot of perks. These perks usually include things like enhanced abilities, strength, speed, stamina, intelligence. So in reality, she probably gets to double dip into the super strength, double dip into the enhanced speed and agility. So now you'd have to expect that she's probably far stronger than any other hero in terms of, physical stuff. And on top of that, Amazons were supposed to be master tacticians as well, so she's probably a genius. So there's that. The only problem is that beyond being able to piece this together from the actual Greek stories, there isn't much to go off to decide where on the list she should be going. So factoring in the fact that she has obvious attributes in terms of strength and intelligence, Whilst none of the pitfalls of the other wielders we've mentioned so far, no active failures or incompetence, this is really where she belongs. She has lots of upside, no obvious downside, but there's no context and no feats. She's mid-tier unless she gets some in-universe backstory someday. Next up, we can go with Mr. Bug. And I mean, dude gets extra points for having the best suit of the bunch. Really love the Mr. Bug suit. I'm glad they brought it back during season 5. And you know, he has the enhanced strength and other attributes. Good for him. And unlike the other characters, who have made blunders and mistakes, as Mr. Bug, Adrian never did. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say he was the best hero, but he tried his best. He was a more simplistic sort of guy, especially during his first appearance. I mean, that appearance in Reflectol, he did well enough for himself, but he had to be guided through things by Lady Noir for the most part. And whilst he came into his own in Passion this season, and he really did carry the team that episode as Lady Noir was, well, she was creeping on him the whole time, I just don't think he's really hit the same highs as the other characters further up on the list, and so here he sits. And this in turn leads us to Scarabella, who, well, she's pretty much just a very good substitute for Ladybug. When she first debuted, there was a little bit of a learning curve, but this was mostly exacerbated by the fact that for half of the episode, Cat Noir was having a sook. He was being antagonistic towards her, because he didn't like that Ladybug wasn't there. But regardless, she pulled off the Lucky Charm Gambit and she saved the day. And then, during this latest season, she pulled it off once again when she teamed up with Kitty Noir, who was completely new to using the Cat Miraculous. And they whooped some significant ass against quite a powerful villain. Honestly, Scarabella, in terms of ability, intelligence, feats, she's pretty decently close to early seasons Ladybug of seasons 1 to 3. In fact, I'd say she's actually got better feats than early seasons Ladybug. After all, that boxing bear guy, he's stronger than any villain that Ladybug faced before that, except, Hawkmoth. And it's to the point that really the only major element that lifts early Ladybug up a bit higher than Scarabella is one, we see a lot more of her triumphs, so she has a whole lot more evidence of her ability. And then there was that whole event during, I think, Oblivio, where Fu mentioned how Ladybug had used more Miraculouses at once than anybody else in history. So clearly that's a pretty Giga Chad moment that boosts you up quite nicely. And it's one that really does set her head and shoulders above the rest of the characters. And so this means that since Guardian Ladybug is this Ladybug but better, and is able to access all the Miraculouses, choose her own team, create protective charms, when she uses her lucky charm she gets a way cooler costume, and can pretty much create anything she wants technically, as apparently, according to that one episode in season 4, there's no limit to the power of creation. And hell, even that moment where Felix and Gabe steal all the Miraculouses, I don't think it really reflects that badly on Ladybug. I don't think she really made much of a mistake, as after all, who the hell was going to predict that Felix and Adrian had done a swap like they were starring in The Parent Trap?
So scary. Honey, you never looked better.
And so I'd argue she didn't actually do anything wrong there. And in fact, as the Guardian, she does just get win after win. No matter how good Gabe's plans are, she beats his ass into the dirt. And I know, she really does ooze plot armor sometimes, but regardless of whether the writing pretty much forces her to win every time, in universe, I don't think it can be denied that she's the GOAT in terms of the Ladybug Miraculous users. At her peak, she's probably the strongest next to Gabe, and she has by far the most versatility because there was at one point she could just bring any hero she wanted alongside her. And thus, she really does need to sit on top of this list in my opinion. You might not like it, I know there's a lot of Marinette and Ladybug hate in the universe, and honestly, she's not exactly my favourite character either. But you can't deny she is one tough customer. And so yeah, that's the list. And I'm sure you all have your thoughts on it, good or bad. And so now I'll pass it over to you, because these have just been my opinions and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the ranking? Do you agree with me? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe and let me know.